Hello and welcome to Comically Incompetent. My name is Doug.
And I'm Ben.
And this week we are going to talk about Aquaman.
Arthur Curry.
So, yeah, another DC hero. So, for the beer this week, we have the Fathom IPA from Ballast Point Brewing Company. So, Ballast Point was founded in 96. 3 major breweries in San Diego, Long Beach, and Anaheim downtown Disney District. So this beer is, called Fathom IPA. It is from the Discovery series from Ballast Point, and it is a 6% alcohol by volume. So take that with what you will. So Ben, why don't you dive into Aquaman a little bit?
All right, so we're going to be talking about the furious, ferocious protector from the depths, Aquaman. I actually really love Aquaman before going into this. I know I always tout myself as like a huge Marvel fan. I think this is one area where I think DC did better than Marvel. There's probably more out there, but I like I like Aquaman more than Namor. I know everyone's like the famous Namor.
I don't know anybody who knows
Nobody
Namor.
knows who Namor is. No one gives a shit.
The only person I know who's ever said the name Namor besides you was in Funhouse. Lawrence said references Namor.
Because it's just like so off-brand. Actually, fun fact before we get into it, Namor came first. Before Aquaman.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Aquaman's just better.
Aquaman's better in every way. So, much like our last character we talked about, the Penguin, he is a very old school DC character. So his first comic book appearance was in 1941 as well, which is exactly when Penguins was. He was written by Mort Weisinger, and the artist was Paul Norris. Those are like some old school ones. Not as well known as Penguins and Batman's creators, but they are also well-known DC artists.
Yeah, the only DC one I know is Bob Kane, who we referenced in
wonderful.
The last episode.
Wonderful, wonderful creator. So, as far as origin, he is a half human and half Atlantean. I love getting these characters that are very like Greek mythology with their Atlantean.
That's true, yeah.
You know, pretty fantastic. So the beginning of his story is he was born of an Atlantean queen and a human lighthouse keeper named Tom Curry. So essentially there was a lighthouse keeper off the coast of the United States. I believe it was on the East Coast. He ran into a beautiful Atlantean queen named Queen Atlanta, and he was lucky enough to bestow himself upon her, as the religious people might say. So Atlanta then went back to Atlantis, left Arthur with Tom. Arthur is Aquaman, Arthur Curry. Tom didn't experiment on his kid, but he raised his kid and very soon realized that he had some weird things about him. He was like, okay, there's clearly some Atlantean blood in here. So he found a scientist that he actually saved named Dr. Stephen Shin. And Dr. Stephen Shin tried to learn as much as he could about Arthur. Yeah, I know. See, this is going back into like old school comic books. You got great names like Stephen Shin.
Well, for me, the only Aquaman experience that I have, I was never a big Aquaman fan, was the movie with Jason Momoa. And that scientist character is nowhere to be found in that movie.
It's very much so like the original origin story of the character. You don't always hear it. You know, it's not like Peter Parker where it's like, it's the same thing as Uncle Di, you know, that kind of thing. So this is the original comic book iteration from 41-42. So essentially what happened is Dr. Stephen Shin does as much studying on Arthur as he can, and he eventually decides, I'm going to publish these stories, because any reasonable scientist, after they find this great information, they're like, I'm going to publish this. However, Tom didn't want that. Tom was very protective of his son, so what he did is he destroyed all evidence of his son in these research. Like he didn't destroy his son's stuff, but he destroyed all the research papers. He destroyed all these studies.
Interesting.
So what Shin decided to do is he hired a very famous DC name that maybe you've heard, maybe you haven't, named Black Manta. Black Manta, you hear, is just like a recurring villain.
And he's in the movie.
Black Manta is a villain in the movie. He's in the villain. Yeah, so Shin hires Black Manta to secure a vial of Arthur's blood. It was the last thing that wasn't destroyed in kind of the great purge of the DNA. Interestingly enough, Tom gets in this fight with Black Manta. Doesn't actually die from getting stabbed or anything, but he has a heart attack in the middle of the altercation, which is not the most comic booky way for like a person to die. Is a heart attack in a fight.
Yeah, I can't think of another person that died of a heart attack in a comic book.
Kind of takes the wind out of the sails. Like imagine if you're, you know, same thing going back to like Peter Parker and he like pulls the gun on Uncle Ben and Uncle Ben has a heart attack. Kind of takes the winds out of sails. But hey, you know what? It was the 40s. It was a different time. So where Arthur / Aquaman goes from there is he scours the earth looking for Black Manta. until he's eventually brought in by one of his mother's agents, Volko. Volko's another Atlantean.
Okay.
From that point, he gets brought back to Atlantis and learns essentially all about Atlantis. He learns about their weapons, he learns about their magics, he learns about their abilities, and he really hones who he is.
Yeah.
And, pretty darn quickly, he becomes the king of Atlantis.
We have a little bit of like a Mr. Miyagi situation, Karate Kid going on here.
Yeah, sure.
He's learning the ways.
Yeah, he's learning the way. He's going to wax on, wax off.
Exactly. He's going to paint the house and paint the fence, and he did a lot of painting in that movie.
He did do a lot of painting in that movie. I don't think painting would go well for Aquaman, because for people that are not familiar with Atlantis, if I should have gone into it earlier, Atlantis is underwater city. It's Greek mythology.
It wasn't originally, though. It sank, right? That was the whole thing?
Yeah, that's the traditional story, is that Atlantis was a great city that sunk into the sea, and then from there, the people of Atlantis developed aquatic abilities. I don't know if that's necessarily the way it is in DC.
No, they kind of go into that in the movie.
Oh, okay, yeah, fair. Well, because I know traditionally, again, it's based off mythology, and in mythology, that is the case. It's a great city that sinks into the sea.
There's also that Disney movie about Atlantis.
Journey to Atlantis.
That was a great movie. Don't you dare say otherwise.
No, it was. It's just a whole thing, I'll tell you what. Yeah, so he becomes king of Atlantis, and that's generally the kickoff point for a lot of the new iterations of the comic book. Like when you think of Aquaman, Aquaman's the king of Atlantis. Yeah. That's what he does. He protects the sea. I really love a lot of smaller altercations he gets in. I'm a big, not to go on my own little soapbox here, I'm like a relatively environmentalist thinking individual. He has a lot of ones where he fights like people that are setting up oil rigs and people that are polluting the ocean. Yeah. Very like Captain Planet-esque in some of those. He fights everybody else too, but I really like that they throw a bone to the keeping the earth green.
Which is nice, especially considering a hero that was made in the 60s, when I feel like the 60s were obviously not as environmental.
40s, but yeah.
40s, that's what I meant, sorry. You know what I mean? Like the 40s were not nearly as environmentally friendly. So for them to create a hero that we kind of push that agenda back.
Had at least a bit of an inkling in there. Yeah. No, I think it's great, and I really appreciate that. So we didn't play this for our last superhero, supervillain, because he didn't have any powers, in my opinion. He just had stuff. Let's play our game. Doug, what powers do you think he possesses? I'm going to give you a heads up. It's a really, really long list, and there's items in there. Those are the spoilers.
I've seen the movie, the Jason Momoa movie, but I will say that, so he has the trident.
He does have the trident. Do you have any idea what the trident's name is?
I don't think they say in the movie, and if they did, I forgot. So no, I don't know the name.
So it has two names that depend on when it was. It was originally one name, transitioned to the second name. Any guess what either of those might have been? It is a famous trident. Same thing. We're looking at mythology here.
Poseidon.
So originally it was the trident of Neptune, and then it was changed to the trident of Poseidon. So it's the same character.
Well,
it's just
from Roman
versus Greek.
Yeah, exactly. Went from Roman to Greek.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, because
it's the name.
Greek mythology kind of hit, I think, a bigger chord with people. It didn't hit necessarily pop culture, but it kind of did. Greek mythology kind of did.
Yeah, I'd say so.
I mean, you have Percy Jackson and the Olympians. That was obviously the 2010s.
Oh my god, I totally forgot.
You know what I mean? Greek mythology kind of hit a pop culture thing. There were books and movies.
Yeah, it's like Nordic mythology hit a bit of popularity kind of in the 90s and 2000s.
Which I don't think Roman mythology ever did. So that makes sense that they would kind of switch maybe to something that was a little more well known from Neptune, which is the Roman version, to Poseidon, the Greek version.
Yeah, just a little more popular. So more appeal. So the trident itself has a lot of abilities. So let's go, before we even go into his other powers, take a gander and take a couple of guesses. What powers do you think specifically the trident gives him?
I have no idea on the trident. What I will say I know is that he can breathe underwater, and the joke is that he can talk to fish. So I think he can control fish, right? He can be like, "Hey, fish, come help me." Right?
So you've nailed it, but that's actually not one of the trident powers. That's a separate one.
I have no idea.
You'd think that would come with the trident, right?
I couldn't even tell you what the trident does.
So the trident does very, how would I put this? You know Avatar: The Last Airbender?
Of course.
So the trident is essentially the Avatar: The Last Airbender weapon. So it allows him to control the weather. So you can create storms, create rain, create monsoons, things like that.
Yeah.
It allows him to control lightning. So rather than just a lightning storm, he can shock you with it. He can control water. You can create monsoons and stuff with it, drown people out. He can defend against certain magics with it. You know, it's one of those like, kind of like in Harry Potter when they use their wand to like deflect spells. You can do stuff like that.
Oh.
And the last thing you can do, and this makes no sense to me whatsoever, but it allows him to fly.
Wait, what?
Yeah, God of the Sea, allowed to fly.
Why did we not see Jason Momoa flying through the air then?
I'd pay to watch that.
I mean, yeah.
Jason Momoa's awesome.
He's
I
gorgeous.
Love that guy.
Oh.
Khal Drogo, God of the Sea.
He can fly?
So only with the trident. He can't fly without it.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, weird caveat rot. A lot of his powers are actually kind of built into, as well as the fact that it is also a weapon.
Yeah.
He can also stab people with a trident. That's the coolest superpower of all. Stab him with a trident.
Yeah, he fights with a trident in the beginning of the movie and then gets like the trident at the end of the movie.
Oh, nice.
Oh,
But
yeah,
yeah.
you haven't seen the movie.
Yeah, I haven't seen the movie yet.
We'll talk about the
So
movie
I'm a
more
terrible
later.
person.
I'll
I'm
go
excited. I'm excited though. I'm definitely gonna watch it soon. So, what other powers do you have? You did say control animals. So the way it's generally fish. The way it's generally described is that he can telepathically speak to marine life,
Yes.
and they have a great respect for him as the Atlantean king.
Okay.
So they generally will help him. But in a lot of the iterations, he actually just asks for help and they help him. He's not usually like, let me exert my will upon you, for I am king of Atlantis.
Yeah, so he respects the sea life and asks for help.
Yeah, he's a very like respectful guy asking for help kind of thing, which again, I appreciate. You know,
Yeah.
I think that's way more fun than... I think it's way more fun to have a character that asks for help and is respected and given help than just like mind control. Like that's much more of like a villain approach. So I dig it.
Well, I make the connection of like in Lord of the Rings, Gandalf asking the eagles for help.
That is a very appropriate comparison.
Yeah, it's out of respect. He never is like, you need to help me. He's like, hey, if you guys can help, that would be really cool.
We're really in the need of some
like,
help.
we really need some help here.
Yeah, so that's his interaction with the animals. So what other abilities do you think he has? I'm going to say I have a couple more on my little list here that I've prepared. Some are legitimate superpowers and some are what I would call a human superpower, like how Daredevil is a lawyer. I consider that a superpower.
He can swim really fast.
He is a master swimmer. I did include that on my list.
You did?
Yeah.
Oh, look at that.
Because even without his powers, he's just like he's freakishly athletic.
And then he has the power to grow amazing hair because Jason Momoa has a mane of a god.
He does always have amazing hair. I didn't include that as one. I assume that's something to do with the salt water.
I have no idea. I'm just guessing at this point.
Okay, so I'm going to give you, this is the cheating one. This is the superpower that 90% of our heroes have. He has superhuman strength and durability.
That's every superhero.
Yeah.
That should go without saying.
Except for Mark Spector. Mark Spector did not have superhuman durability.
That's the second week in a row we're calling back to Mark Spector. I think he's a good...
Penguin did not have superhuman durability. See, we didn't do as many as
all right, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
But it's the kind of guy, you know, you could like throw a boulder at him and it's not going to kill him.
Yeah.
You know, so there's something there.
Like me.
Just like Doug. Doug immune to boulders. So the other one, he is allowed to breathe underwater and on land. I consider that a superpower. It's very basic, and people kind of look over it. But he can breathe underwater and on land. Not a lot of creatures on planet Earth can do that.
Well, frogs? No, that was dumb.
Yes, Captain Frog.
I'm sorry, that was so dumb.
No, it's okay.
We're keeping this in. I'm not going to cut my stupidity out.
I'm not going to let you cut that out.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that, but I figured it kind of went without saying.
Yeah, that's fair. I still think it's important.
I should say it. I realize now that I do know a little bit about Aquaman from the comics and in the movie, and I feel like I should kind of assume that people maybe don't know about. I should say things even if I assume it should go without saying.
Well, so here's also where that becomes complicated. This specific one is traditionally in the comic books, he gets really weak the longer he's out of water. So you could almost make an argument, you know. Yeah, like he can't chill out of water and be full power.
I didn't know that at all.
Yeah. He's good for a while, but he kind of like dries out, you know.
That makes sense.
Like a fish can live on land for a couple minutes or something like that.
Well, because the Aquaman movie does not... I guess he does most of his fighting in the water. The Justice League movie, though...
It's out of water.
He's never in water. He's only in water when you first meet him. He's never in water again. He's full power.
I don't know if in those iterations they keep true to that, but that's the traditional, is that like he's good out of water for a little bit, but if he's separated for too long, like there's some adventures where they're in like space and stuff, and he basically gets like dehydrated.
Oh, okay.
And he starts to lose some of his strength because it makes sense.
Yeah.
And then I have one more last thing. that I labeled under powers, which I'm going to equate to like when I said Daredevil is a lawyer. He is a master or expert, depending on what you prefer to call it, politician, because he's the king of Atlantis, and he does have to do a lot of political things. And I know that sounds like kind of a joke where it's like, he's a master politician, but it does actually come up in a lot of his comic books and some of his iterations. Maybe not the most recent movie. I don't know if he does anything.
Not the most
political.
recent movie, no. Quite the opposite, actually, in the most recent movies.
But yeah, that kind of plays into he was one of the original founding members of multiple popular groups within DC Comics. Okay. So like I would like to think most people familiar with the Justice League. Yeah, at least to some degree.
I feel like most people are familiar with Aquaman just in pop culture in general. I feel like a lot of the jokes come about Aquaman.
There's a lot of good jokes about Aquaman.
Like I feel like Family Guy has several episodes where they joke
where he's just floundering on the ground.
Yeah, exactly. Where they joke about Aquaman. So I feel like most people know about Aquaman in the generic sense of Aquaman,
but not necessarily as much of a deep dive.
And then I think everyone knows the Justice League just from whatever iterations and
it's one of those that's been done a lot. It's like the Avengers, everybody's heard of it. But he is one of the OG original founding members of the Justice League, which is pretty cool because the Justice League is incredibly old. Yeah. Incredibly old. But he was one of the founding members. He's one of the earlier DC characters, and I think it's really cool that he's maintained his popularity for 80 years now.
Yeah, it's definitely impressive.
Like he's been someone that like people relatively know, like a Captain America or a Batman. People know him, even though he hasn't been done as much in movies. I think that's pretty cool. Now we're going to play our guessing game again. I know you love the guessing game.
I always sound like an idiot.
I missed this in the Penguin episode. I think you'll do a good job because this is like a very comic booky thing.
I always sound so comically incompetent.
We should name a podcast that.
Not going to do that bit again.
Yeah, that's fair. Let's not do that bit again. So we're going to play the game together. What villains do you think he consistently throughout history has bumped up against? I kind of spoiled one earlier.
Yeah, and for the movie, I know he fights the Ocean Master.
Yeah, he fights a lot of ocean people.
And Black Manta.
Black Manta's probably like, in my opinion, is his like most generic go-to. He's like the Joker, not necessarily in importance, but like he always fights the Black Manta. Every iteration he fights the Black Manta.
Yeah, I'm gonna say then he fights like whatever. I don't know, anything that comes out of the ocean. I feel like they're not gonna exactly
out of the ocean.
You know what I mean? Like I feel like they're not gonna be like, what's a big DC? Like if Bane is terrorizing a city, they're not gonna be like, quick, Aquaman. Get out of the ocean and come help us fight.
He pretty much fights things that are in immediate threat to
crabs.
Atlantis, and then things that are immediate threats to the entire planet. He fights some crabs. There's some crabs in there. Yeah, so I would say probably his most notable enemy is the Black Manta. Some of his earliest enemies, he actually fought Nazi U-boats.
Really?
During World War II. Mm-hmm. Well, you gotta remember, he was made in 41.
Oh, perfect.
And every comic book character in the 40s fought the Nazis. That's just kind of, it's just kind of the way it went. Well, because they want to make the characters, not just in film and everything's appropriate for the time, but every comic book character, generally when they're created, has a purpose.
Yeah.
For instance, like Captain America was created during like World War II, and so there's that thing.
Yeah.
Black Panther actually has a whole thing about that. He has one of the most interesting creations. We're definitely doing a whole Black Panther episode.
So then
look forward to that.
Yeah, let me test you then. You said in an earlier episode that every hero who is made to fight the Nazis has a good guy German scientist.
Okay, this guy does not have a good guy German scientist.
No.
He does have bad guy Stephen Shin, which I don't think Shin is German. But Germans do have shins.
Well, I think,
to the best of my knowledge,
a lot of people have shins.
I'm no scientist, but I think Germans have shins.
That's true. They
scientist shins. Yeah. So that's who he originally fought, and then he's fought everyone throughout DC history. Generally speaking, the most common ones you'll find are people that are trying to attack Atlantis.
Yeah.
Which kind of leads me into the next thing. I mentioned earlier that he was a founding member of the Justice League, which in the DC universe is a really big deal. Being one of the leads, that's, it's the Avengers of the DC. There's another group that's not necessarily as popular in like pop culture. It may have been in the movie. It would make sense in the movie, but again, I didn't see it. It's called The Others. Did they mention The Others?
Not that I remember. It sounds familiar, but it might have been you talking about it. But
that's very possible. So The Others are generally the way I describe it are the protectors of Atlantis.
Okay.
So it's a group of all Atlanteans. It was basically right when he got to Atlantis, he became king and he founded the others.
Yeah.
There are many mystical weapons in Atlantis. Obviously, by this point we know the trident of Neptune / Poseidon.
Yeah.
There are many others. This is a group that he founded to protect those weapons. So the main bulk of his enemies in the early day were people that were coming and try and steal the secrets of Atlantis.
Okay.
You know, that's
Yeah.
like a very traditional plot. Like people trying to break in Atlantis or Olympus and steal their magical weapons. So that was the others.
Like in the movie Hercules.
Like in the movie Hercules.
I won't sing the songs because I don't know if we get copyright struck.
Hopefully.
Copyright struck for that, but I wish I could sing the songs. Okay, so you were saying...
Yeah, so I like them greatly. The equivalency I would give them is in a prior episode when we were talking about Ghost Rider, we talked about like the supernatural kind of faction, the Midnight Suns. It's kind of sort of like that, except they're the Atlantean defenders defending against mystical threats that may come from the sea or involve the sea, things like that. I really enjoy that faction. The other person that he's commonly associated with is he kind of touches everybody throughout the DC universe at one point or another, but a common thread is when he goes to Atlantis, he does get a wife named Mira.
She is a main character in the films.
Good to see. She's kind of all over throughout time. I guess now it's been 80 years now he's been married to her, so she's kind of always there. I really enjoy the guy. Big fan of the ocean, big fan of fish. Shout out to my pet fish named Mando.
And growing up for both of us in Southern California, we got the ocean right by us.
Yeah, so it always felt applicable. You see this guy in the ocean, you're like, you're telling me I could go down 30 minutes to the beach, and there's a chance I run into Aquaman.
And I work, my 9 to 5 is right on the water, so I can see Aquaman from my office window.
Oh my gosh, that's the dream.
Yeah.
It's gonna dream. He's gonna save you from your work. He's gonna save you from your work.
Be swept up in Jason Momoa's arms.
Yeah. So this is one that I have always had a big interest in Aquaman, mainly just because when we were growing up kind of in that era, Justice League was one of the huge properties / animated adventures at the time. And
that's kind of ruling
big
comic book television.
Yeah, I mean, you know, Marvel's huge now, but DC was much more popular.
Yeah, I
when
mean,
we were young.
Not applicable to Aquaman, but growing up on like Teen Titans.
Teen Titans was awesome.
Like DC kind of ruled that animated television
world
for a while there. Marvel came in later, which that's why I always have a soft spot for DC. I also love the DC television shows like The Flash and Arrow, and
those are really good. I always wanted a Aquaman. Maybe it's harder to do in a television format, but like I always wish that like Arrowverse Flash
had an Aquaman
thing. I wish there was an Aquaman, even if it was just a throwaway where there's a couple episodes split during one of their crossovers where they're like, hey, this year's adventure, Aquaman's coming to help out. I always thought that'd be interesting.
I'm glad there's not, because I feel like you need a decent amount of CGI.
It probably is incredibly expensive to make anything Aquaman.
And I feel like Jason Momoa was just perfect. He's a film actor. He's fantastic as Aquaman, which I can go into the movies if you want.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think that's kind of the next best place to go is talking about kind of his iterations. Like I was saying, I like the animated adventures. Local cinema buff, Doug coming out here. So tell me a little about how you felt about the movie.
So animated adventures, talking about animated adventures, we have I don't know if you know about this, a 1967 Aquaman TV show.
I've heard the title. I don't know if I've seen.
So
animated, yeah?
Animated show.
Okay, no, I do that. That's the really goofy one where he has like a Speedo. He has like an orange Speedo.
Yep. And he was voiced by a man named Marvin Miller.
Good old Marvin.
Who was alive. He was born in 1913. He was just a kind of an actor who did movies like with like Humphrey Bogart and stuff like that, an older actor.
School.
Yeah, 1960s.
Retro.
So then you get into the movie where the actual first time we see him in a live action on-screen iteration is 2018. We have Aquaman starring Jason Momoa, who we talk about constantly because he's
Jason Momoa's awesome.
Perfection.
And he's a great guy.
Yeah. We have Amber Heard playing Mira, and then we have Willem Dafoe playing Vulko, which you talked about Vulko, his teacher, pretty much. And the movie
he's the one that brings him back and basically teaches him what it means to be Atlantean.
Yeah. So in the movie opens with, you have the lighthouse keeper, who is played by I'm gonna butcher his name, Temuera Morrison. I've seen him in a million things. I mean, the dude's famous. He played Jango Fett in Star Wars, the newer trilogy.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So we've seen him before. He plays the father, and then you have Nicole Kidman playing Atlanta, the queen.
Atlanta.
Atlanta, yeah. So they get together, and then they have a kid, and then they're attacked by Atlanteans, and she's taken back to Atlantis.
I didn't even realize she was the actress now. I love her. I love Nicole. Nicole Kidman
fantastic.
is wonderful.
So then she's taken to Atlantis, and Tom Curry is left to raise Arthur.
Before we get any further in this, if you guys have not seen, I mean, it's 2 years now, but I still feel like giving everybody the fair spoiler. Probably going to be spoilers for the first Aquaman movie at this point. I mean, that's just kind of the setup, so I don't think we have any problems. But if anyone else hasn't seen it and they're like, I don't want anything spoiled,
sorry about that,
maybe tune out for a little minute and we'll get back in. But
I'm just kind of doing the generic beginning of the plot.
2 years old.
Yeah. So then you find that Ocean Master, who is played by Patrick Wilson from Conjuring fame. The Conjuring movie.
Oh, okay. I was like, I don't know Conjuring fame. I know The Conjuring.
No, from The Conjuring.
Oh, okay.
He plays I don't remember the name of his character in The Conjuring. Ed Warren.
Ooh.
So then he's playing Ocean Master. Movie happens, and Jason Momoa is kind of the reluctant person to kind of he doesn't want to be.
Oh, he doesn't want to be the superhero.
Yeah, but he's
That's
kind of
fair.
forced in that place. So Willem Dafoe is fantastic. He plays like his teacher
Another
throughout the
great
movie,
actor.
and he has to go save his mother from like this giant tentacle monster, which is where he gets the trident and the famous Aquaman orange and green outfit. He doesn't get to the end.
Wait, does he actually wear?
He wears it.
He wears the traditional
At the end of the movie.
Oh, that's
well,
awesome.
the DC did a good job on it. People complain about the movie. I thought it was pretty good. I thought it was better than a lot of the movies that DC made leading up to it and for its DCEU.
That's fair.
And they had a sequel coming out. I don't know what's going to happen with it. So this is a comic book podcast. I'm not going to go into the drama of it, but some things happened with Amber Heard. She might be out. Movie might be on hold. Moved around. Maybe she's not in it anymore. They'll just write her out. You don't know.
It's a tough thing about movies these days. I thoroughly believe
Yeah.
that we should all take the ethical choice, but a lot of stuff gets derailed for a lot of different reasons these days. But that's to each person's judgment.
Yeah. It's set for 2022. Nicole Kidman and Patrick Wilson from Aquaman are rumored to reprise their roles as Atlanta and Ocean Master, respectively. You also have the man who played Black Manta. His name is...
Oh, he's back in it then.
Yeah, Yahya Abdul Mateen II.
Nice.
I'm sorry if I butchered that. I'm reading it very quickly. I have a very small phone screen.
That's fair. We need higher resolution phones for this podcast.
My computer decided now's the time to update, so I don't have it on the computer. But he played Black Manta in the first one. He was fantastic. I think a lot of people made fun of it because Black Manta has a famously giant head. And he made the mask. They made a giant. They gave him
Did
a
they
giant
make it a
head.
giant
They
head?
gave him the giant Black Manta.
I gotta
head
watch this movie now. I'm gonna watch that movie tonight.
That's the thing. People gave a lot of trouble. It's a good movie. It's actually.
It's almost like Suicide Squad. Everyone gave it a bad rep, but it's flawless.
No,
that was the worst movie I've ever seen.
I think that what I would say is Wonder Woman was a good movie. Unobjectively, it was a good movie.
Oh yeah, it was really good.
This is along the lines
Great
of
mustache.
Shazam. People gave Shazam a lot of flack, and Shazam was
Did people
actually
really give Shazam flack? I thought
Yeah.
Shazam was wonderful.
I like Shazam a lot. I think what's his name? Levi. Zachary Levi.
Yeah, Zachary
was
Levi.
Fantastic.
He perfectly embodied a child that is now an adult superhero.
And
Like he
an
perfectly
insane,
embodied that.
buff man.
Yeah, like not knowing what to do with it.
Yeah.
That's
And-
like another one, which is another one we'll eventually butt into. But Miss Marvel is kind of like that, where it's this person that like just doesn't get how to be a superhero, or they're like a kid that's always thought about it and has no idea what to do with it. I
Yeah.
love those characters.
So then in the movies we see, so this is after, this 27 before Aquaman, we see 2017, we see Aquaman in the Justice League movies that the DCEU made. The movie, it's
Oh yeah, that was before Aquaman.
that was before. So
They don't know how to organize
they
films.
did it the wrong way cuz
The films, I don't think the films are the worst things, but it's just like, dude, get the solo films out first.
Well, after watching Aquaman, I was like, well, I would have liked Justice League more if I would have saw Aquaman before
Like,
I
it
saw
makes
Justice
a lot.
League.
It
Yeah.
makes a lot more sense that way.
Because you're watching his intro, and it's like Ben Affleck goes to that town that Aquaman's from, and he's like, "We need you to join us," and he's like,
We need a
"No."
fish.
Yeah, and he's like, "No, I don't want to join." But then you're kind of just like, "Why is this Aquaman dude being kind of a jerk?" And then you're like, "Oh, I know now because I know of
Yeah,
his
now you
upbringing and his
know why he's
life when
kind
I
of a
see the
jerk.
movie." So they kind of, I feel personally, they butchered Justice League. I know I'm not alone at all in thinking that they butchered Justice League.
Oh, definitely not. Hey, do you ever notice there's never more than like 6 people on screen in Justice League?
What are you talking about?
Even when they're in like big cities. There's never more than like 6 people on screen.
Yeah, because they blew their budget on CGIs. They couldn't afford actors.
When I watched Justice League, that was the first thing that shocked me. I was like, where are the people?
The thing about Justice League was you had these Jason Momoa as Aquaman, amazing. You even have Ezra Miller as the Flash, fantastic.
He was fantastic. Loved Ezra Miller as Flash.
That movie was very good in its separate pieces. As a whole, when put together, it was not executed
more setup.
well.
It just need more setup.
And I think Jason Momoa is an amazing Aquaman. I think he's a great actor, and the thing I like about him as an actor is that you can see that he has fun doing it.
Oh,
he's not just there for the paycheck. He's there because he's like, this will be a blast. I get to be Aquaman. And I feel like you don't see a lot of actors who are like, I feel like a lot of actors take the role because like, I need some money, series, whatever you sign on. He was like, I get to be Aquaman.
I think that's the best thing that the DC cinematic universe has going for it is like, obviously Ben Affleck loved being, he was flawed, but he loved being superheroes. I mean, he was Daredevil. Like he's clearly been trying to be a superhero his whole career. Yeah. Like Jason Momoa has fun with his roles and he picks the roles he knows he's gonna have fun in. Ezra Miller did a fantastic job. I think Gal Gadot, I think she's like a fantastic representation of just like strong woman in cinema. You know, like she did a great job with it. Like, I remember they cast very well.
I remember when they announced casting Gal Gadot and people were like, she's so small, how's she gonna be an Amazonian? And then she played the role and you're like,
presence.
Damn.
She had a huge presence. And then Henry Cavill. Like Henry Cavill.
Oh, fantastic.
It's one of those two. Everyone has now grown to appreciate Henry Cavill is apparently like a giant nerd, which I love. It's like awesome. A whole bunch of that came out when he was doing The Witcher.
Oh, that's a great show.
Yeah, and he was just like, I'm a big Witcher fan. And people were like, wait, really? And he's like, yeah.
He played Geralt beautifully.
Yeah, great Geralt.
Great Superman. I think Man of Steel was actually a good movie. I know one of my good friends, Dominic, he's a big fan of Man of Steel. He watched Man of Steel like every day for like a month straight.
That's a lot of Man of Steel.
He thought it was a great movie. And even though I don't think it's a bad movie, I think it left a little bit to be desired.
Yeah.
But I think it was a pretty good movie. I remember when they started the DCEU and they started with Man of Steel and everyone was like, oh, okay, let's see where they do from there. And then I feel like DC executives were like, we made money with Man of Steel. Let's just skip 20 steps and make Justice League.
Yeah.
And everyone was like, oh, hold on.
It.
Everyone's like, hold on.
Let's get a plan.
Let's not do that. First. And then they're like, no. Batman vs. Superman, and then Justice League, and then solo movies. And it was like,
that's a literal description, especially with Aquaman, of jumping the shark.
Oh, definitely. And the sad thing is, I do work in the film industry, and like you see it all the time. You see like, well, this made us money. Yeah. This might make us more money. It's like, well, you didn't think it all the way through. You just thought of the money. And then also, they still make a lot of money because I'm part of it. I went to go see all those movies.
Exactly.
I complained constantly because I'm an American.
But you're still going to see them.
I complained and then gave it my money and then complained more.
It's like, this should have been better. I didn't give you money for the first one for this one to be the same trash.
Exactly.
It's the American way.
That's why I was so happily surprised when I watched Aquaman and went, wow, okay, that was a solid movie.
Yeah.
And I think it was one of those ones, like I said, when I reviewed Harley Quinn in the Moon Knight episode, the Birds of Prey, for a DC EU movie, really good.
Not bad.
As a movie in the general term of the film industry, not great.
Yeah, that's fair.
But that's what I think Aquaman, Birds of Prey, Shazam, Man of Steel kind of land in that area of like, for the world they're building, it's pretty good.
It's not bad.
For the world of film, they skipped too many steps and they're floundering in the movies that they're making now. Jason Momoa is the best part.
How many comicals out of 10 would you give it? And I'm gonna put qualifiers on this. I'm gonna say give me 2 different ratings. I'm not even gonna ask for an objective movie things. Comic books I think are in their own categories.
So comic book movies. Okay.
So I'm gonna say comic book movies, and then DC. For a DC movie, how many comicals out of 10 would you give for both those categories?
So comicals for a comic book movie, I'd give it a 6.5.
Okay, and that's going on a legitimate 10-point scale. This isn't one of those dumb 10-point scales where like 50% is a 0. It's like, no, that's out of 10 actually. Yeah,
because I think the thing, Marvel did such a good job. I set Endgame and the first Iron Man as 9.5s. I'm never going to give anything a 10 unless it's absolutely
It's hard
perfection.
To give a 10 unless you like have a heart attack during the movie.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh my God, it was flawless.
I thought I was going to have a heart attack in Endgame, but that's its own podcast.
Dude, Avengers Assemble.
So,
crazy.
I think as far as a comic movie, I'd give Aquaman a 6.5 comic movies, which doesn't sound great, but you have Endgame to put up against. Yeah. And then as a DC movie, I'd give it like an 8.
That's pretty good for a DC movie.
Would
you put it like hair below Wonder Woman?
I'd put it below Wonder Woman and Birds of Prey.
Okay, that's fair.
Right above Shazam.
Okay, that's right. I thought you were gonna like Shazam.
I think Zachary
higher on the
Levi.
list.
So for our listeners, for years I've made the joke of Shazam,
Shazam,
and, like, doing this pose and pretending like lightning's striking me.
It's very much so that it's the slogan and catchphrase of Shazam is to rip his shirt and go Shazam and then become Shazam.
I'm a big fan of Shazam. We'll get to that when we get to the episode. I'll talk everyone's ear off about Shazam. But I would say that Shazam movie had its weak points.
Fair.
That I feel like they could have easily gotten around.
I've heard there were a couple points where it's like, okay, I get it. You're really trying to push whatever idea. Got it. And they like went a little too far.
It was the epitome of campy.
Okay, that's fair.
Which I'm not.
But Shazam is a pretty campy character, kid that turns his super.
No, for sure.
Yeah, fair. From a cinematic perspective.
Yeah. So for me, I'd put it probably in Aquaman number 3 behind Wonder Woman and Birds of Prey.
Okay.
Because Wonder Woman was a great movie. Birds of Prey was different, and I like different.
Wonder Woman was one of those movies where, like, even outside of a comic book world, it's a good movie.
That's a good movie. Gal Gadot.
Good movie. Oh, my gosh.
I've even comparing it to Marvel, I think she was one of the best castings for a comic book movie in general.
I'd agree with that.
She's not the best one. Like, Robert Downey Jr. is the best Iron Man.
Yeah.
There's nobody who could have played Iron Man better than Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think Chris Evans was pretty darn close to a perfect Captain America. And some people were like, oh my God, there were times where he was so bland. I was like, well, that's just Captain America. That's playing a perfect Captain America is you're this sometimes bland, perfect boy.
And then Hugh Jackman as Wolverine.
Oh, you know what? That might take my top casting as Hugh Jackman.
Beautiful
as Wolverine.
casting. Which we'll get into in the X-Men episode of who we think would be a good.
We're going to do 2.5 years of X-Men.
You can. There's constant stuff about
X-Men.
Hit
us up on Twitter if you want 2.5 years of X-Men, because I'm willing to do 2.5 years of X-Men.
But as far as DC goes, Gal Gadot is the best casting.
Oh, definitely.
And then right behind her, I think Jason Momoa as Aquaman.
That's good here.
I think he embodied the character of Aquaman beautifully. The movie might not have been perfect, but he was the best thing they did in that movie.
Hey, you know what? That is good to hear. And I got to be honest, in a comic book movie, casting is the biggest thing I'm looking for.
Definitely.
Because the writing can be a little iffy because it's a comic book.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I love comic books. I really do. But it is campy and it's a bit goofy and it's over dramatic. Like, it doesn't have to be Inception.
Yeah.
You don't need to, like, rethink the way a spinning top turns to enjoy a comic book movie.
Yeah, I get you.
So that is pretty fantastic. Sounds like the movie was pretty good. I'm looking forward to it. I feel like a bad fan for having not watched it up to this point because I love Jason Momoa. I can't wait to be Ocean Khal Drogo.
That's true.
That's the main thing I think of him as because he was so good in that.
He was fantastic.
Yeah. So again, Aquaman, fantastic. I highly recommend. There's been many iterations of this character throughout time, mostly animated, not so much live action. It's kind of hard to do a live action guy that lives in the water. Sounds like
good job though.
Yeah, it sounds like Doug would recommend the movie.
I would easily recommend Aquaman. If you're not a big fan of DC and you haven't seen Aquaman, I would say watch Aquaman.
For a very different take, but for what I think is an equally good take, if you guys look at the animated adventures from like the 90s of Justice League with Aquaman in there, it's a very different take. It's a much more like traditionalist take on Aquaman. I would also recommend that. It's just interesting to see the two different approaches to the character, and I think both are great.
Yeah.
Anyone looking more into the character, I'd definitely recommend both of those. He's a classic DC character, real fantastic. And now, I think it's about time we bring it back to, today we're having a little Fathom IPA. Doug, I'm going to give you I'll call it a newbie appreciation. Let me give it one more sip going into this.
Which, he's sipping Fathom because if you guys look at the beer, it is a old-timey scuba diver, like the old original like scuba diver look. Underwater. That's why we chose it for Aquaman because
suits they used to use way back when. Big yellow hood.
Yeah. So what do you think of it? What do you think of the beer?
You know what? It's a pretty good beer. I have a tough time. It's not as good of an IPA as the one we had on our last episode. Was it black tie, bow tie?
Bow tie.
That was one of the best IPAs I've ever had. But you know what? Easily. If you're looking for a good solid IPA that's, like pretty crystally.
Yeah.
Is that the term? Because it's the crystals on the hops or whatever that makes the flavor.
Ballast Point didn't give a lot of information when I did the research to talk about it.
They're sneaky with their beer flavors.
Yeah, they said like citrus with like a weird, I don't know, they didn't give a whole lot of information on it. Ballast Point, I think as a whole, as a brewery, is fantastic. I think they have some pretty outstanding beers. I think this is probably not, in my opinion, not their best.
Yeah, it's not their best, but at the same time, if you're looking for like a traditional IPA, like a real bitey traditional IPA,
it's got that bitter hop flavor.
It's a very bitter hop IPA. But if you like that, I'd recommend it.
Yeah, it's called the Fathom IPA. You can get it at pretty much, I feel like, most supermarkets. It's pretty common.
It's pretty popular. I heard that they're recently trying to tighten up a little bit and become kind of more of an in-house microbrew kind of vibe.
Yeah, which then if that's the case, you can go to, if you're from Southern California, San Diego, Long Beach, and Anaheim inside the downtown Disney district. You can get these beers on draft, which I feel like is better. I've had this beer on draft.
Draft's always better.
And yeah, you can go to one of those 3 locations and grab this beer or any of their other fantastic beers. Ballast Point is a fantastic brewery.
They really are.
I've been to all 3 of the breweries they have in Southern California. All of them outstanding.
Not bad.
I've never had a bad beer at their brewery.
Yeah, there's one of those good, solid. It's like Firestone. It's just a good, solid beer company.
Yeah. It's good if you want just like a quick IPA. I'd recommend getting it probably on draft, going to one of their locations in Southern California. If you're from Southern California, if not, like I said, you can pick it up pretty much anywhere.
All right, well, that sounds good. Sounds like Doug would recommend, particularly in person.
Yes.
Yeah, and so with that, this has been our Aquaman episode. I had a good time.
So did I.
And let's see, Doug, what's our social shout out? Get them socials out there.
You can tweet at us at comicallypod or follow us on Instagram at comicallypod. That is our name going forward for social media because everything else was taken or too long.
That is completely fair. You know what, Doug? You did a great job on that. I had nothing to do with it.
Thank you. Give us a follow with any suggestions, changes, critiques, likes, whatever you guys want to do. Ask us questions, whatever you want. Let us know.
And thanks again for listening, everybody. We appreciate all the great feedback we've had. We appreciate the great conversations that we've had over this. And we're glad that we could have a good time hanging out with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this was Comically Incompetent Podcast. Signing off here, Ben.
Doug.
And thanks for listening, everybody.
Bye.